So thanks everybody for turning up as well and wanting to come and listen to this, what may be a bizarre talk, I suppose, maybe, I don't know, but there's an unusual reception to the book as well. So the book, Become the Force, was actually an idea of a long time, maybe 10 years. I've been doing this for like 10 years, and the idea to make a book was always on the cards, and so it's kind of come to fruition now, like 10 years later after doing it, which is amazing. So the book is based on this philosophy or this movement that I started 10 years ago, which is kind of like taking the principles of the Jedi Knight in Star Wars. We're all familiar, and if you're not, then I don't know why you're here. No, I'm joking. But it's taking the principles of the Jedi, because they are warriors of peace, and they were the guardians of peace without the galaxy. And I thought that was quite an amazing title to give anybody or somebody. And it's kind of like this superhero that you don't really see wearing a real cape. You know, we're all grown up with superheroes being these like superhuman people, but the Jedi are more spiritual and more philosophical and more down to earth and real. Okay, I know the lightsaber's a bit far fetched, but you know, moving things and telekinesis. I'm not saying that they're impossible, but I'm just saying that it's more ideally reachable. So the idea was that I would create this philosophical movement based on the Jedi to kind of really energize people into doing something more amazing with their life. And basically, the book covers 9 lessons that we kind of put together to give you a basis, or give people a basis, like a grounding level of what it's all about. So what is it all about? The idea, the principle is based on the supernatural life force energy, which the Jedi in the Star Wars universe call the Force. But this can be taken into, way back. It could be chi, it's consciousness, and a way to talk about it, maybe more scientifically, would be the universal life force energy that is. Like thermodynamics dictates that energy is never created or destroyed. It's always constant, and it's ever changing. It's ever growing, and it changes different forms and things. You know, that expression, we're all stardust, and that's kind of a magical thing. So that we're all connected, unified in some way. That we all were stars at one point, or we were dinosaurs, and now we're here, and keeping this life cycle going. But the idea of the book is to tap into this this energy, this life force, this field around the entire universe, and really have a communication with it. And so that sounds a bit bizarre, I suppose. But people have been doing this, I believe, for years. Where if you take Buddhism, for instance, they study this stuff quite intensely, and they go into deep meditations to try and have this communication with the universe. But I feel that the reason I started this book is because I feel those type of communication efforts are like shrouded in all kinds of stuff. You know, you need a diploma in Buddhism just to even get close to like transcendental meditation, and you think, goodness me, there must be a simpler way to communicate with the world. And so the idea behind the book was to give just that, like a basis, like the idiot's guide to Buddhism, if you like, in a crude sense. So that's where we come from, and it's the lessons that we give in there are all to do with. There's 9 in there, so we'll go with some, like, for instance, we talk about intelligence. And intelligence for us, and how it's depicted in the book, is not that you go to university and you get a diploma, or you go to school and you do good grades and stuff. All that stuff is just specific kind of information that you can retain. That just means that you're good at remembering fact. It doesn't mean that maybe you're intelligent. But intelligence in the book, and what we try and encourage, is reading and understanding, and that urge to say that you want to do more, or you thrive to understand the universe more, and having that, closing that gap between the universe being this mystical thing that you can never reach, to being part of you, and you understand that. So that is where we kind of try and bridge this gap, and it's all to do with how you live your life and be more mindful. And now, in the Star Wars universe, we talk about the light and the dark side of the Force, and so they both have to exist, like yin and yang. You know, they both have to exist as there to bring balance, because without it, you can't understand that one exists. You know, if we had no dark, then we wouldn't understand what light was. So this is a big part of the entire movement, which is basically that you have to project yourself to being on the light. Now, in reality, how we treat it is that there's a bunch of dark forces that are trying to control everybody's life. It could be down to the food that you're eating, the stuff that you're digesting on television. It could be the fact that you listen to certain type of music that are produced more and more manufactured in certain ways. So we're almost guided, if you like, in this bizarre way to say that, okay, well, you're going to be born and you're going to get into this category, and you have to grow up, get married, have a child, and then go to work, and then you'll die, and that's it, everything's done. And you always have this weird perpetual race where you don't know what you're doing. You're motivated by money most of the time. You're trying to strive for the things that you don't really understand. Again, it's this education. Oh, because I've got a diploma, that means I'm doing something right. But what I'm trying to do is strip that back to being real, and things like loving for people, caring for one another, making sure that you have the basics, that love, compassion, care, making sure that everyone's okay and love thy neighbor. I think we've forgotten all of those things, and it's kind of like, how are we supposed to be peacekeepers of the entire universe if we can't even look after our neighbor? So it's stripping those things back and just really getting a sense of who are you. And this to me comes down to the consciousness and being like a force for good and doing those things. And the idea is that there's an encryption, basically, that we've been like encrypted to being a certain way, and we've lost our senses. We can't communicate with the universe like we might have done like thousands and thousands of years ago. And the Native Americans had this great communication with the universe, and they understood the planet, and they had this vibration communication that we could never think of these days. So and I truly believe, and what we say in the book, it's how we're living our lives now. So when you take yourself out of that notion of, okay, well, this is how we live and this is how we exist in reality, if you take yourself outside of that, then you can exist in the realms of whatever vibration and frequency you want. And one of the great ways to explain what I'm talking about is when I always use this example, so if anyone's heard this before, of anything I've ever said before, then I'm sorry, but we talk about bamboo, and I'm sure we mentioned it in the book, where I try and tell people that we're all connected, and people are like, well, it's a supernatural energy that we can't prove and all this rubbish. And they're right, I mean, like, consciousness exists between vibration and energy, so we can't measure it. There's no way to understand it. Like the split experiment shows us that there's no way to monitor it because it misbehaves, and it has this amazing, magical behavior pattern that you just can't monitor. So I say to people, well, bamboo is a fascinating example of this. So bamboo can exist anywhere in the world, of any age, and it will just flower randomly, but it will all flower at the same time. So regardless of its geographical location, its age, or the conditions it's kept in, it will flower maybe once every 70 years. But all bamboo flowers at the same time, and it's crazy to think, how does it know all this information? It's because it is connected in this unusual way, just like when people know. And another example I kind of talk about, when somebody listens to themselves, or listens to themselves as a beacon of communication with the universe, they say, they know when something's wrong. When you get a feeling, one of my family members may be in danger, or something terrible may have happened, and you have this weird, and then you phone and you find out, somebody's had a crash or whatever, and they've gone to hospital, and you think, how did I know this information? Well, you've always known this. This is not something about as well in communication with the universe is cosmos ordering, and it's kind of almost like creating your own reality to achieve amazing things. So like the Jedi in Star Wars, they have this outlook where they're very thoughtful of whatever happens. They're constantly thinking about the situation at hand. They're not just jumping in kind of like, on a rational thought or emotion. They kind of sit down, they think about it, and they analyze the situation. And with cosmos ordering, it's creating that reality yourself. So you project your own reality to create it. And like the Buddha said, we are the imagination of ourselves. We create everything we see around us, and it's fascinating because the Buddha said that when you die, the entire universe dies with you, and it's important to know and to realize that you are really important. Because one of the big things the Buddha said was that people always kept saying, wow, the magic of the universe has to be just right, and we have to be the certain distance away from the sun, we just have running water to create life, and how special that we're so dependent on everything else that we almost feel superfluous, that everything else is so important that you forget and lose the fact that you are important. But the Buddha said that without you, none of those things could exist. And it took me a while to understand this, but what they mean is that if you weren't here experiencing it, then how do you know it exists? So you are so important to the fact that the universe exists, and you are the key to it. And like science says, you are the center of the universe at any one point in space. So that's quite amazing. But cosmos ordering is putting out your vision of something. So you say, I'm going to do it. I'm going to create this reality, and it starts today. So people may, like I've helped some people before who are now part of the movement who've like had a bad time, and they've been not really finding their way in life. And I feel a lot of millennials are in the same position where they feel spiritual, but spirituality's got a bad rep, like terrorism and all this rubbish. And then you got like cults and all sorts of people come out of the woodwork trying to, charlatans making money and all this rubbish. So people get disillusioned with it, but they always have this like the striving to be like spiritual because they feel it. We're all spiritual by definition. So I think that what I'm trying to teach is that younger generation, or that thirst for doing better and doing better in the world and being the peacekeeper of the entire galaxy and the universe, to try and encourage that. And a great example which happened recently, which I'll tell you about, is where people create their own realities, and it's fascinating. I love this story, and so my girlfriend's fed up of hearing it. But my cousin, he's a weightlifter, right? He's 70 years old, and this is amazing. 70 years old, and he did bodybuilding years ago when he was younger. But he was like, oh, I wanted to be like I wanted to get a world championship. And this is crazy, world championships. Everyone would say it's ridiculous. 70 years old, you're never going to become a world champion at anything because look at you, 70 years old, and it's a small town in Wales. It's crazy. So he was like, no, I'm going to do it. So he was like, okay, I'm going to do it. So he did it. He went to the locals, and he went to regionals, went to nationals, and then he got invited to go over to Miami about 2 weeks ago, I think it was, wasn't it? And then to compete in the World Championships bodybuilding. I thought, goodness me! So I spoke to him the week before he went. I spoke to him. It was a couple of days before he went, and I said, "Are you nervous about it?" He said, "No, I'm going to go over there. I'm going to do it." And he was so adamant that he was going to do this thing, this task, this mammoth task that everyone in the world is trying to go to in that section. And he was like, I'm going to do it. So he went over there and he did it, and he won the world title. And it's like crazy. A 70-year-old guy, all natural, won this thing. And again, that is an example of setting a goal and becoming that reality, and becoming the Force, which is exactly what we're trying to explain in this book. And I could go for hours. I'll come to a close because I want to give time for people to ask questions as well. We're limited with time. But the overall idea, the message is to try and I'm trying to energize people into wanting to be more creative or be creative, because creativity is the essence for everything we see around us. And a lot of it is changing the mindset of somebody saying like, oh, I could never build like this. Look at this skyscraper. People look and they marvel at beauty, and they think, oh wow, this huge cathedral is amazing, or this like bridge is fantastic, and they think like, well, how is this so amazing? And I think humans built this with their hands. Nobody like, it didn't just appear there. Nobody's superhuman or special. We all have the ability to do amazing things, and by empowering people to think that way, you'll just catapult yourself and shine like the sun. And that is exactly what we're trying to do with this. So you become the force for good in the world, and everything else is just it's just bliss. So anyway, thank you for that talk, and I just want to open up for some questions in case anybody had any questions to ask me about anything, the book or the movement. Yeah.
Is Jedi earlier roots?
It does have earlier roots. There was a Japanese movement that is very, very old, obviously, and George Lucas did tap on this to get the name Jedi. I believe so, but again, because there's not much documentation on it, it's a bit kind of cloudy. But I believe there was something similar to this way before the movies, and it came into power. I know he did a lot of work with like Taoism. He looked at how that philosophy fit into this Japanese type of this ancient Japanese one, and like the warriors kind of Japanese movement. So I think it existed before Star Wars, but it didn't have a name in a sense, or it didn't have a how do I say it? Like he fused them all together, all the ones that were in his eyes important, which I found quite fascinating that it was there in a movie since the 70s, But yeah, it did exist, I suppose, before the movies, but it never really had a true name or a true kind of fashion to how it was put together. Yeah, so.
He's the world leader of Jedi.
Yeah.
He's like an American leader.
Yeah, well, no. So there's
lots of other people who sort of came up with the same idea at the same time.
Yeah, so there's two. I'm the leader of the Church of Jediism, which is like the name of it, which is cool. And I could talk to you forever about why I called it the church, but the Church of Jediism. But there are smaller factions all over the world, and there's like the Jedi Realist Association, and some of them are more Christian based. Then there's the Temple of the Jedi Order, which I don't know where they take their teachings from, and they're very loosely organized. They don't have any kind of like books or organized training, if you like, or there's no real organizational hierarchy to their systems, but they do exist. And I suppose we started at the same time, but with evidently different messages. I think a lot of the other ones, like I suppose the Jedi Realists are less Star Wars influenced, and they're more kind of, they just say that it's similar to what the Jedi is, but the Temple of the Jedi Order are more like film influenced, so they go really into Hollywood in that way and take all the teachings from the movies. So we're kind of like in the middle. We kind of take in all the sources, but with the Star Wars as a backbone, if you like. So I think that's why the popularity of it kind of is way bigger than those other smaller ones. But yeah, there are other little factions around. No.
I'm sure you've run out of that now.
Yeah, no, it was. Yeah, no, it was cool. I actually, I seen the Star Wars movies when I was super, super little. And it's a funny story, actually, about seeing it when I was a kid, because I'd seen this movie, and I kind of got so, like, this is amazing, and I was in awe of the Star Wars movies. So then I forced my parents to rent it out, like, almost indefinitely. We had it on constant lease from this movie store, which was only around the corner from my house. But we borrowed the VHS so much that it snapped and broke, and I was so distraught, I couldn't believe it. But then we bought the trilogy, and it was amazing. But it was so bizarre that, like, other people in the town must have been like, why is this always out on loan? I never get it. But yeah, no, but my father's quite an interesting guy. He's because we never like been super, super close, but he's well, now we are. I mean, like when I was a kid, because I was always distant because of my condition, because I have Asperger's syndrome, so I was always quite distant with people. But my father's a martial artist, so he does like karate. He actually invented his own type called Yamashima, and he's been going now for 30 years or 40 years or whatever. But but he's quite an influential guy, and I think that's kind of led me on that path because he was always about Japanese philosophy and karate and being this kind of, he did yoga and stuff, and he was a guy who introduced me to like Tai Chi, and he gave me this book, and we did all this stuff, and I think that's quite a fascinating kind of, I don't know, it's definitely, it's all in the book anyway, but yeah, as you probably know, yeah. Anyway, any more questions, anybody?
Giving us a little insight on
Yeah,
that.
sure. Okay, so yeah, why not? Let's go for it. So the idea of the word church, because obviously we have Temple of the Jedi Order, Jedi Realist Associations, there's all this kind of nomenclature that kind of, I didn't think fit the bill. And the word church used to be place of God, but unfortunately it lost that, and now it became, the church just means congregation of people of like minds. So that's quite nice. It's not, dogmatic, it's not Christianity, it's just anybody can use the word. So I find that it has a bad kind of name as well. So when you say church, it's something people say, oh God, but I think we shouldn't use it in a bad way. We should try and reinvent it. It's exactly the message in there. It's reinventing, getting creativity back to normal. And so I decided to call it church just to say, right, let's change something. Like just with the naming of what we're doing, we can change something. Just that's how powerful it is. But to answer the question, we are mainly an online-based community with thousands and thousands of people online. We are hoping to try and make that more of a like a physical representation, so we can have like, I don't know, relief efforts or like volunteer groups. We have done stuff like this in the past. We've had people group together, and we were like 4 or 5 people group together and go out and do kind of charity work. And we've had stuff on the website, a few years ago when that happened. And we have had people really wanting to have a physical building and manifestation of what we're doing. And we want to get there to have some kind of physical presence, because I think it would be create like a learning center and a creative space. That would be amazing, but we're yet to do that because obviously real estate is so expensive anywhere in the world now, and it's just finding the right time and the right funding streams, and we will do it. But yeah, to answer your question, we are basically an online movement, but but it's only by force. We don't want to stay online. It's just that it's because of how it exists. But I think it's great because it has accessibility, and it's capturing that audience of that age range where we're trying to really like, I don't know, get them all excited about something or change how they grow up. But I think that's why it's a tool to us in a way as well. So having an online church is a tool in a way for this millennial movement. So I hope that answered the question.
Thank you, yes.
Cool, no worries. Okay, cool. Anybody else have any questions?
No,
It's a good question.
Millions of people revering you.
Yeah.
You're going to become,
Well,
isn't there danger of that?
and I think it's personalities. I think if you set out on a mission where you're that personality, you're going to be a totalitarian dictator, then you always will do. I don't think I'll ever be like that. And actually, I love the fact that it kind of runs itself in a way because, I've got the book and we did the training and stuff. But I take it, I take influence and change from people, because if you don't listen to information and if you don't evolve and change, then what on earth are you doing? You'll only decline and go the other way. And I think that is the problem that cults have. That they have this, this crazy like totalitarian attitude, and they won't listen to reason. They won't listen to change or development. But as the Buddha says, we're all evolving, ever changing. That's all life is. And like I said, thermodynamics, we're always changing. We don't stay the same. So I don't think I could ever be like that. So rest assured, I don't think that fear should be there. Sure. Question, because I wouldn't say that the Church of Jediism is a religious organization, as in a religious doctrinated, dogmatic. There's no deity related to it. So then we don't infringe on the belief system of somebody else. So say you're a Christian and you wanted to learn a bit about Jediism, or wanted to empower your life, or use it as a battery or a superpower. Then I suppose you could use the book to do that, and you could use the church as much as you want or as much you don't want. But in terms of actually having members who believe in God, that's up to the member. And the telekinesis and all that type of or psychokinesis, that is something that we do actually teach. I know it sounds bizarre, bear with me. We do actually teach that on our website, which will be available next. Well, the website's up, but the teaching doesn't come out till next week. But we have a world famous mentalist called Lloyd Auerbach, and he's very famous in this field. So he does teach that, and how you can kind of flex that muscle, I guess, and to do it. Because I don't think it's impossible, but I think that people who are interested in Jediism do have a thirst for trying to move things with their mind and do all that. And it's cool. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, it's documented. It's well documented. And I've met people who are hell bent on saying that this does happen, and they have video proof of it. And I've seen some, and it's very questionable. I mean, it's like wow. So yeah, we haven't got there as a growing populace yet, but I think the Jedi are definitely interested in that. So yes, I think it's because for the simple fact it uses Star Wars as its base to say that they're Jedi and the peacekeepers of the galaxy. But I think it's the fact that it's new, it's different, it's kind of like it uses technology, it's secular in a way. Well, it is. Yeah, it's very close to Taoism. Actually, the book is in the Taoism chats on Amazon, but the difference is, I suppose, that there's no strict like rules or statutes where you have to. How can I explain? And this is one of the things that we teach as well. So if somebody wants to teach and learn with us and grow, if they slip out of it for 6 or 7 months and they go totally against it, they come back in. There's nothing wrong with that, And I think a lot of other religions like Taoism and things, you have to really submit to this whole like embodiment and this whole empowering kind of thing, to really get it. It's a lot like I said with Buddhism. Excuse me. You have to have almost like a diploma in it to really get it. But this is accessible for most people in a way where it's easily digestible. I mean, after reading the book, when you get through the 9 lessons, you'll be like, oh, I get it. So it does differ quite extensively. But again, to look at it side by side, you'll notice the differences. But you'd have to obviously read the book and come with those. But it does differ. Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, that's how it. I said this, about like Chi and other people. They have this same notion of what it is, and it's not. And this is one of the things we teach, actually. It's not saying that we're completely correct. We're just saying that it's a path where people can access the information that relates to them. Because I feel like all religious bodies, no matter what they are, they all lead to the same place. And they're all doing the same thing. They're striving to have this understanding of the universe. Now, and the reason there's so many different religions is because of religious movements, is because people are always trying to find their own way there. And personalities are like so different and vastly different, and everyone has a different personality. So I guess Taoism might work for somebody of a certain personality, but Jediism will work for them in another way. Not saying that we're saying that they're wrong and we're right. I'm just saying that we're showing a different path or a different way to get that person involved. And maybe they will go on to research Taoism, and maybe they'll do Buddhism, and maybe they'll become a monk. I don't know. But one of the things, I think it was the first chapter of the book, we're talking about intelligence, and one of the things I try to encourage is people to read those texts and those religious kind of scriptures, because it's a way for you to expand what you already know about the universe, I guess. So, but yeah, right. The Force, it's like interchangeable. It's in everything. It's in pretty much all religious texts. I'd say a lot of people would call it like the Holy Spirit in a way as well, because people would say, the Force. I have this quite a lot with Christians. They say, like, oh, aren't you just talking about God? And I say, well, yeah, probably. People say to me, Dan, do you believe in God? I said, well, I don't know, not in a dogmatic sense, not in the sense of a guy in the sky with a beard or whatever. And I believe in God as that everything is God. I'm a manifestation of it, but God is everything, and everyone is the Force. It's that universal life force energy. So it depends. It doesn't matter what you call it. I suppose it's the same thing. But you are right. It does have very, very close similarities, or exactly the same thing, just different nomenclature. Sorry, were you going to ask a question at the back? Or no?
Have you met George Lucas? Does he come to
no. Do you know, it's a good question. I haven't done an interview yet where somebody hasn't asked that question. Sorry. No, you don't have to apologise. And the first time I was asked this question, I did a Time magazine interview, and we were doing this Centerfold in Time, and they asked me, "Has George Lucas been in touch?" I said, "No, actually, funny enough, he hasn't." And it was weird because I've always expected to be like sued or something, and then they basically said, "Oh well, maybe you will now because you're in Time magazine." And nothing, never, ever spoken to George Lucas or Disney or Lucasfilm. I think the closest thing we got is we had to get some legal advice or boundaries in the film. That was the closest we came to actually communicating with Lucas, and which is crazy, but. I do know some actors from Star Wars. That's kind of cool. Like, or some actors in Hollywood who know other actors or people involved with Star Wars and stuff. That's kind of cool. So Warwick Davis came to my house once. That was kind of cool. We did a TV show. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but that was bizarre. Well, yeah, it was my parents' house. Actually, not my house, but my parents' house. But yeah, it was interesting. But no, George Lucas and I have not met. I would love to meet him maybe, and I wonder what he thinks of it. Maybe it would be. I don't know. He might just find it so bizarre that he loves it, or he'll be like, yeah, "Okay, so this is my legal team, go and have a conversation." But no, we cover all those boundaries. So it's Jedist and Jediism, not Jedi, because he obviously owns that as a trademark. So maybe that's why actually.
Does your father now revere you? Rather, you look up your father.
No,
he was academic and you look up.
Yeah, I think so.
You've achieved so much.
Yeah, well, I did. Do you know what? Funny enough, so he's got a degree in history and archaeology, right, and reflexology. But then I've just completed a degree in chemistry, so now he's inferior. So he has this like, damn it, But no, it is cool. But I do actually teach him a lot now. Actually, it's really bizarre, isn't it? I got him sat on this essential oils diffuser recently, and that was kind of cool. I was telling him how to be more relaxed and use these to heal and stuff. So yeah, it is funny actually. He like looks at me as if it's like comes for me for answers now. He phones me. He's like, "Dan, I need help with this." I'm like, "Okay," but yeah, it's cool. But we're actually going to do Tai Chi classes soon actually as well. So that's another thing. I inspired him to do that again because he hadn't done it for years. So. That's a good question, actually. I was asked this question once before this year, and it was on a radio show, but I couldn't really talk about it all then because I'm paranoid about it. Because I feel like the dark side is a conglomerate of things. It's a network of people who are trying to suppress certain things. It could be spiritual awakening. It could be access to the secret schools and stuff. I think they've heavily influenced these things over a period of time. They're a congregation of people. I don't want to name them, but they do exist. There's like 7 major ones. They're normally family bloodlines, and these do infiltrate a lot of things all over the world. And actually, a lot of people I know, and the research I've done in these areas to see how I could, be the force for good to change this. A lot of those people actually died, so because of a result of trying to go against this dark side. So an approach needs to be a global approach, a universal approach of this type of message is what I'm trying to do, rather than a direct approach. Hey, I'm going to sue you, or I'm going to expose you for this, this, and this. You'll never win because they're so powerful. So the dark side is a big thing. You may call me crazy, but there's a lot of. I mean, I could sit for hours. I could write a book just on that, and that's a lot of my life has been heavily researching this, and this is what led me to doing this part of it, because I wanted to do something that was like going to battle it head on. So yeah, that's correct. That's what I'm saying. That's why it's subjective, or it's the person themselves. Like you said, how do you choose? Okay, so the Christians answer this question. So they say, well, God is the judge. God will tell me what is right and wrong. But I believe that we all inherently know what is right and wrong. And I'd say Charlie Manson and studies, and you could say what people like about studies, but I feel that the person knows what they're doing. You unless you're mentally ill, which is an unfortunate truth sometimes, unless you're mentally ill, know what's right and wrong. And in my mind, but that's how I see it. That's correct from their point of view, but we're not asking. We're seeing from an observational point of view. So how would I see it? I would say, well, that person's evil, regardless of their intention on it. It is in a general sense evil, and that's how. But you have to have some kind of judge on it. So, yeah, but then again, that's just my perspective of it. I'm not trying to tell anyone. In the book, I actually say it's down to you to judge what is right and what is wrong. I'm giving my from my personal viewpoint of things, it's only my opinion at the end of the day. It's not like a hardcore fact that this is right and wrong. I'm just saying that this is how I see it. But it's a great question. It is. Sorry, it's a gentleman in the calf. Sorry. Well, that's a good question. Yeah, no, and it's true. And I did a lot. Like I said, I'm a chemist, so I did a lot of studies on different types of things. And one of the things we came across was simulated reality. Now, I think that AI going towards the way of being a deity or creating its own kind of religion or its own path, I think that would be close to how we would see simulated reality. And the reason I say that, or the holographic universe, or whatever you want to call it, is because it would exist outside of what we currently understand and know as physical people. An artificial intelligence is unknown. If you start making quantum computers and then making quantum calculations outside of what you have done, then how do you measure something that's just on its own? And then it becomes like the split experiment. You can't. You observe it and it changes. So with AI, it would be off on its own kind of tangent. And to me, that would open up all kinds of bizarre vibrations for reality. And how I see it as a chemist, it would shift up different vibrations, and of course then it may open that door to say, well, we're either created by design or we're just a random, I don't know, random ET thing that was on a rock and infused with water. I don't know, so it would what you're talking about was artificial intelligence creating a religion would actually get closer to the answers to the universe than any of us currently can do at the moment. But I don't know, that's just my take on it. But
so you actually believe that? Can you repeat that?
Sorry, I believe that if artificial reality does start creating its own religious stance on life and reality, I think that it may be closer to understanding the fabric of the universe than what we currently understand. And the reason I say that again is because with the split experiment, it does actually lead us in the direction of simulated reality, which would say that things are by design, but through something. And I don't know. Again, you're going into quantum realms of bizarre conversations, and it was something I did study quite a lot of. But that's a different conversation. So besides ladies trying to, and you're right, because with the particle and the wave, they do exist simultaneously. But it's how you choose to interpret that or understand that message or whatever it is, how you interpret the universe is evidently how you will carry on through life, and you start as you mean to go on. And if you're gonna become like this drug addict and then go and kind of rob cars and then murder people and whatever, you're obviously going down, in my mind, from my opinion, that's a bad way, but if you want to go and help people and always do your best, that's what I'm trying to encourage. But yeah, right, simultaneously, these are big answers to the universe. I'm not trying to say I'm God or anything, so I maybe can't answer all these questions about good and evil, because I am not the almighty life force energy. I'm just trying to convey a message. Yeah. It's a great question. So yeah. I think both, really. And a good example of this would be, and this would answer that question. So, and I use this example. I don't know if it's in this book. It was in something I wrote a few years ago. Is where if you if you really want to, if you okay, so you say you're working in an office, and you walk past them and you said, "God, you look fantastic today." That person, you'd feel really good because you projected something good to somebody else, so you'd feel quite good about it, and quite euphoric. But that person would be like, "Wow, well, isn't that I look pretty good today? So I'm feeling pretty dope right now, you know." And you're walking around and you're feeling confident, and that is an expression that the person received. They were influenced by the Force because you influenced it, if that makes sense. So we are all affected by the Force through intentions and intent that we put out there, because we all do it, you know. So if you walk past somebody having an argument in the street, you feel that kind of it's negative, you know. You can feel it. You don't have to look at it or hear it. You just feel it. So, but that they're putting that out there, so they're affecting you by affecting the Force, if that makes sense. So it's a kind of a chain of events that happens. And again, it's like down to science, but hope that answers that question. Cool. Anyway, thanks a lot. Anyway, guys, thank you for all the questions. That was crazy good. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks.